So our next brown bags will be next year, with Fazana talking about infrastructure as code and Darren talking about how browsers work. If any of you guys want to do a brown bag, please talk to me or Aurelian or Mark. So without further ado, Craig.
Awesome. So I guess any of you who have worked with me, around me, near me, or within a kilometre of me would have heard me wahing on about simplicity at some point. And sort of how this topic came up was really through pressure from Mark, who's been pressuring me to talk on something for a while. So I gave him a list of, I forget, 5 or 6 titles that came off the top of my head that I thought might be worth talking about. And this one came back as the, I guess, the topic du jour. It was slightly more violent in terms of how I originally worded it, but Mark has softened the edges a little. So I won't tell you what the original title was, but I guess simplicity in development, right? Why do we always do the hardest thing? And I guess the title itself is a little clickbaity. It was considerably worse. The reality is, and I guess this ties back to the discussion that Martin had on software architecture. I think, was that last week? Software's hard, right? It's really hard. It's complex. We deal with complex change, and we do it in a complex and changing environment. The rules, the tools we use, the way we operate in that environment, it changes faster than we can, right? Yet somehow we've got to keep pace with it. So how do we stop ourselves from making it worse, right? That's really the essence I want to sort of dig into here. What I hope you take away from the discussion is rather than thinking about simplicity, a deeper awareness of the actual complexity that we operate in. Right? I think we often take for granted how difficult writing software is, how difficult the environment we operate in is, and just how hard it actually is to get stuff done in this sort of software landscape that we have. And then what can we do to manage that complexity better? So I guess in terms of the agenda, there's a few things that I just wanted to run through. One's just some definition of terms, right? I think it's important to just understand what we mean by some certain phrases. Complexity in the software universe. So what is the actual complexity of the software universe? How do we define it? How do we understand what that even means, right? Communication pathways. So how does that communication between teams, between things, impact on our ability to deal with complexity? And then I guess finally, what can you do about it, right? What tangible steps can you take? What strategies can you employ to even attempt to deal with this complexity that we have on a daily basis? So I kind of like this quote. The beginning of wisdom is a definition of terms, right? It's been horribly misattributed to Socrates. I'll continue with that because no one really knows where it came from. I actually did a bit of reading on it. I got distracted, which is probably a good topic for another talk on distraction and focus. The amount of times I distracted myself reading into the history of quotes while I was actually just putting together this PowerPoint was pretty ridiculous. And I was fully aware that I was completely procrastinating on it, which is fine. But what I learned is that Socrates almost certainly didn't say this because it's almost at odds with his own beliefs. But needless to say, look, it's a great quote, and I like it. So I guess the first word I really want to just sort of dig into is just hard, right? And just kind of throwing it out to the room. What does hard mean? When we say something's hard, what does that mean to you as software engineers, as testers, as business analysts?
Complex.
Okay, complex, sure.
Takes a lot of time.
Sorry?
Takes a lot of time.
Takes a lot of time, yeah.
A new area.
A new area?
Cognitive
Less obvious?
overhead. Cognitive overhead.
Cognitive overhead, sure.
What do you say? Difficult to understand.
Difficult to understand, yeah, could well be. These things all take different meanings, right? And so what I did was, I had a look in the dictionary, right, just because I read it occasionally. And these were some of the definitions of hard that I pulled out, right? Some of them make more or less sense when sort of matched against software. You know, solid, firm and rigid, not easily broken, done with a great deal of force or strength, sure. that could be true. Requiring a great deal of endurance or effort. I think this is the one that probably relates the closest to what we do. But I kind of like the other one, difficult to bear, causing suffering. I think we've all been there. So that one resonated with me. So I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then kind of what occurred to me just as I was thinking through was, are we actually doing something that's hard, or is the way we approach it make it hard? There's just I guess, food for thought, right? The thing itself's not necessarily difficult or hard, but maybe the way we approach it is. Think about the word easy. I want to chuck out some definitions for easy. Should be easy, right?
Not difficult to get.
Right?
Cause suffering.
Not much effort.
Not much effort, yeah.
Quite simple.
Yeah.
Comes naturally.
Sure. So I mean, the interesting thing is, when I was looking through, there was at least 11 or 12 definitions of the word hard, but only really 1 or 2 meaningful definitions of the word easy. And they basically all boil down to that. They're achieved without great effort and without presenting much difficulty. And then if you stop and think about that in the context of what you do, right, how often does that actually happen? Right? How often do you actually, in retrospect, do something that was easy? If you think, actually achieved without any level of effort and didn't present very many difficulties, it's not really a daily occurrence in the world that we operate in. So it's interesting when we throw things around, right? And you hear people saying, "Oh, that'll be really easy." Will it? Will it really? In retrospect, was it? They're interesting topics to consider. Similarly, when you think through the word complex, right? What's different between hard and complex? So who can chuck out a definition of complex?
Many pieces working together.
Yeah, sure. That's a great definition.
Hard to understand.
Yeah, could well be. Yeah.
More variables.
More variables. Yeah, that's definitely, I would say, an element. There were many definitions of complex, right? Which again, I found it interesting. But there's significantly more definitions of hard than easy, and there's significantly more definitions of complex than hard, just in the dictionary itself. So many different and connected parts, a group, system, or network of things. And I think particularly not easy to analyze or understand, right? It's complicated or intricate, right? So it's not necessarily easy for you to comprehend the whole. And then simple, right? What about simple? What makes something simple? That should be simple too, right?
Not complex.
Not complex.
Easy to understand.
Easy to understand, yeah. So again, there's a number of them. And there's a couple in here that I chucked in because I really liked them. Easily understood or done, presenting no difficulty, almost exactly the same as easy, right? But plain, basic, or uncomplicated in form, that's where it started to differ, right? When you look at the actual definitions of these words. Without much decoration or ornamentation, so I guess no gold plating, right? Humble and unpretentious, I really quite liked that one. Well, how often do we write humble, unpretentious software? Not often, right? And this one came from chemistry, right? Composed of a single element, not compound. Again, it's a nice. There's nice analogies in both biology and chemistry that pertain to software development. There's some interesting reading in there if you care to dig in a little. So I guess what I want you to do is just think through the differences between hard, easy, complex, simple, just as it pertains to the discussion and what you do in general. And then as we sort of jump in a little deeper, right? Who knows what this is?
Background.
Yes, Chris.
Microwave radiation.
Yeah, there we go. So this is, I guess, a picture of the known universe, right? Measured using Planck radiation, I believe. I didn't read it all, but again, I got distracted for a while. And it's interesting in that this is our perception of the universe, right? And a lot of people would have seen this picture and gone, "Oh, yeah, it's the universe," right? Except it isn't, right? It's only the piece we can see, right? And it's some ridiculous size. It's ridiculously incomprehensible in scale, right, to a human. All the crap that's outside here, we actually have no idea, right? We don't know what's outside the system that we can see, right? And I found the analogy here between, I guess, the physical universe we live in and the software universe that we build. There's some quite interesting resemblances, and within the context of this known universe, we understand the rules and the constants to a certain degree, right, as much as we can, but we can't see beyond the boundaries, right? It's beyond our physical capabilities to even get there, right? We don't have the tools. What does it mean for the software universe? I guess, the physical universe, change is always happening, but it's governed by physical laws and constants, right? There's a set of rules. The slightest and I got seriously diverted here, right? So this was off the rails when I was building the presentation completely. I was right into physics land. So at the slightest tweak to one of these constants could have invalidated the entire universe's existence before it even started, right? Maybe never existed at all. But what's different in a software universe? If you think through those corollaries, what happens within a software universe that bears similarity to the physical universe, and what doesn't? It's true. Or there are, but they could be whatever we want, right? Anything else sort of strike people as a corollary?
One is always on and zero is always off.
One's always on and zero's well, in a binary arrangement, sure, but do we only operate in a binary arrangement? Currently, in everything we do, right? In our software universe, everything's binary. That'll be changing soon, though. There's a good topic for another discussion if anyone wants to pick it up. So, I guess the things that occurred to me is it's virtual, right? It's a virtual universe. We control all the constants, we control all the laws, right? We control the rules of the universe that we operate in. We can impact not just the software, but sometimes the entire environment, right? Listen, sometimes we do it intentionally, but mostly we don't, right? And I guess the hidden context here, it's a multiverse, right? And you've got all these different universes of products that coexist next to each other and sometimes need to talk, right? And we know the constants and the laws don't make a lot of sense between those universes. Somehow we make it work. What does it mean when we start digging into complexity? So when I look at software, right, we deal in complex changes in a complex environment, right, which is kind of almost the essence of chaos theory. The environment itself, I say may be changing, but it's almost certainly changing at the same time. So that's the environment we've built around our software and the environment that software operates in, right? It's always moving, always changing. And they subtly or not so subtly affect each other, right? We know that. We don't always focus on that. But I guess the key here is that the software may not change, right? So even if your software is not moving, the environment around it is moving. And in some ways, that's where we get technical debt or environmental debt, depending on how you want to classify it, right? I know we talk a lot about technical debt. This change is typically happening at a rate faster than the rate of change in your app, in your universe, right? And how we deal with it is interesting. I guess separate aside here, when we talk about technical debt, there's this whole universe of financial analogies around technical debt and software. And this rate of change in your environment, I guess, would be inflation, right? How often do you think about inflation when you're talking about your technical debt? It's quite interesting. Or where do you get the capital from to pay down your technical debt? Did you get it from somewhere reputable, or did you borrow it from the mafia? Is someone going to come around and break your legs? So fundamentally, right? I guess the thing I'm trying to get across here is there's some just baseline complications, right, to software, right? Everything in this place is hard. So what happens when we chuck some humans in the mix, right? But some rational, non-emotional, logical thinking units, surely not going to present any more challenges to the situation. You might remember this guy. If you went to Martin's talk, he spoke about him. Right. His name's on the book. So, come on, someone knows his name. Fred Brooks. There we go. Thank you. So, Mythical Man Month. You may know of it. It's pretty seminal work in software engineering. If you haven't read it, you probably should. It's quite an interesting read. And he said a lot of things, and a lot of things have been said about him. But the piece I wanted to focus on was really just his I guess, work on communication and pathways, right? And I don't know if you can read those quotes. But adding manpower to a late software project makes it later. That's probably what the one quote he was most known for. It's also probably the least understood quote, down to probably this, right? Which I'll read the quote for those at the back of the room. So, some people have called the book the Bible of software engineering. I would agree with that in one respect. That is, everybody quotes it, some people read it, and a few people go by it. So, what you typically see is a lot of his quotes get thrown around. I actually thought this was a fantastic quote, and the fact that I'm actually quoting this quote is even funnier, right? There's some meta humor going on. But I wanted to unpack a little bit of this stuff here, right? So when we talk about complexity in software, there's a human element, right? It's not just about software. You know, we talk about communication pathways. You know, hands up who's sort of heard discussion on communication pathways, and yeah, good. So I mean, fundamentally, it's pretty simple, right? If you've got two people, you've got one pathway between them, right? It's basic network and maths, right? You can work this stuff out. And there's a couple of different models here that just sort of shows as team size increases, the number of communication pathways gets greater, right? And excuse me, fundamentally, we know that, right? As engineers, we know it. You know it when you're in a daily stand-up with 5 people, or you're in a daily stand-up with 12 people. You can feel the difference, right? If you're in a daily stand-up with sort of 10 or more people, some people might be on their phone, some people are looking at the ceiling, you know, because there's too much communication going on. When you sort of get to these sort of models here, where there's like 30, 40, 50, 60 actual communication paths between individuals required to just get the same information across, right? That just really nails the complexity of just humans interacting, right? And then you've got humans interacting with software in a changing environment. It all starts to get complex. So this formula here is just the maths behind how you work out that number. The generally accepted rule is, was it 7 plus or minus 2 for a team size, based on some fairly extensive science that's been done in the area. So then you think, okay, how can we possibly make that worse, right? Well, you know, what if there's more than one team, right? So how do you even work this out now? What if there's remote workers? What if there's different time zones, cultures, or languages? What if people leave? You replace them with new people that lost all the context, you know? These are all elements that make up the complexity of building software, right? It's not as simple as, you know, we do blah, blah, blah in this language. Yeah, that would be the easy part. So there's all these, I guess, just added complexities that come into the equation. And then I guess getting to the crux of it, right? So beyond just the simple baseline complexity we have in the universe we operate in, the baseline complexity we have in the team structure and makeup that we operate with, have you ever considered the impact of the number of things that are just in your system and how that impacts on the communication, right? Like how do you even visualize it, right? And it's sort of interesting when you sort of really start to unpack this, right? So if you had a team of 5, right, just for argument's sake, and let's call it a simple system with only one moving part. Who's working on a system that's only got one moving part, right? Or one thing to keep in context. So I struggled with this, right, trying to figure out how to actually even visualize some of this stuff. So let's say you've got this, did I say 5 or 4? We'll go with 5. All right, so you've got this, let's say it's a 5-person team. You've got all of these different communication paths that need to go on. Have I got them all? See, I can't even figure it out with 5, right? So you've got this network of 5 people and the communication paths that they have to maintain, right, just to understand what they're doing, right? Now, increase that context now by saying, okay, well, over here, we're dealing with a system with one thing, right? Then you've got, what? Does everybody need to understand what that one thing is? You know, what if you had 2 over here? All these lines are going to go over here, right? What if you had 3 or 4, right? So you end up with a separate network of things within your software environment that you actually need to understand, right? And over here, the number of people that need to understand it. How many pathways have we got now, by the way? There is actually a mathematical equation for this that I made up. I don't know if it's right or not because I suck at maths, but you know, you can kind of work it out, right? Like if you start drawing these lines, you know what it's going to look like. It's going to look exciting. And what we actually end up with is this sort of multiplied complexity, right? Anyone know what shape this is, by the way? Well, they're connected, right? So what's the final shape that we've ended up with?
Square.
Great, you got it right. I don't have prizes, but I guess what you end up with is this multiplication of complexity, right? We're now in 3 dimensions, right? Now, yes, we're all 3-dimensional beings, right? And in theory, we're all like really good at that. We can stand up and walk, and most of the time we don't fall over. That's the formula, by the way. I have no idea if it's right, but I figured the complexity equation here for communication pathways on this side, multiply them together. Yeah, sounds about right. If I was test driven, I would have proven it before I did the PowerPoint, but you know. Yeah, whatever. So now we're in 3 dimensions, right? Now, because we're human, there's no possible way we'd stop there, right? Like, surely that's not complex enough. Who's got more than 5 people in their team? Right? Probably almost everybody, right? Who has to deal with more than 4 things in their environment? Anyone sort of starting to see the problem? Who understands everything that's happening in their environment? You know? I would have been incredibly surprised if someone had put their hand up. In fact, there's a slide right at the end that'll talk to that. See if you can pick which one, right? So okay, so this is great. So we've got this 3-dimensional object that maps our human relationships to our software relationships. What about the changing environment? We kind of forgot about that, right? That's the stuff that all this happens in. How do you map changes in the environment onto that system? How do you draw the connections? How do you draw that? It's a good pick though, right? This is the only quote I could find. If you don't, if you don't know the movie, then you know you've got some training. But that's right? There's an added dimension to this, and this is why we struggle so hard at picturing and managing complexity, because it's operating at a dimensional level that we actually can't understand, right? It's not as simple as going, oh, it's 3 dimensions plus time. That's not what 4 dimensions means, right? That's just a common misconception. I'm not going to go into what it means because I'm not that good at physics. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here is this complexity is it's beyond our ability to actually even comprehend well, right? And that's why we struggle so much with it. You know, I think we talk a lot about the need to make things simpler, right? But at the other end of the scale, I don't think we often stop and think about just how complex it really is. And that, I think, is a real challenge. And then I guess where to from here, right? Like, so that's all great. So it's hopelessly complex. We can't possibly understand it, and we can't draw it either. So how do you deal with it, right? What do you do? What do you think?
Reduce the number of connection points.
Sure, that could be one thing you do. Go with the flow? Sure, it's worked so far. Maybe Scrum could fix it, right?
Scrum fixes everything.
Scrum's the solution. Yeah, maybe we need like a 4th dimensional programmer. I don't know. Oh, actually, where's Jay or Mike? Oh, they're not here. They actually do some work on a product called 4th Dimension. But in case you're wondering about the oldest tech we've got in house, it's probably that. Yeah, so you're right. I don't have any answers, right? This is not an answer session, But what I do have is some approaches or some strategies that help you to think about it, right? So, there are no particular order, but I think first is just the acceptance that you personally don't and can't know everything, right? Now, I used to play a developer in a previous life, and I know that ego and personality is a huge part of what drives us. But you need to be humble, you need to work together, combine and conquer, right? Not divide and conquer. These things are complex. If you can't know it all yourself, you need to work with others to get the best understanding of what we do have. And just highlighting that we're a big team, right? 600 people just in our engineering group. We might be divided up into crews and whatever other sort of monikers and labels make sense, but fundamentally we are one team of 600 people and we live and die together, right? If any of us fails at our role spectacularly enough, then we'll all be looking for new jobs, right? So leverage those connections. I see very often teams operating within silos. They don't reach out for help. Whatever problem you have, I can guarantee someone in this organisation can help. Right? There is a massive amount of talent here. To Russ's point, reduce the number of moving parts, right? I didn't know the number. I guessed at 70 years. I figured 50s, space shuttles, software. Yeah, there's 70 odd years of architectural knowledge around how to build software. Actually hasn't changed that much, right? The fundamentals hold true. It's a very new. I'll use science in quotes. Apply it. I think Martin's talk that he gave, I think it was last week before, was great, right? Like, we know the rules on how to reduce our moving parts, how to simplify as much as we can what we do have. Right? The rules are there. We just need to apply it. Involve the right number of people. I almost argued with myself on this one when I was writing it, because I had to think it through pretty carefully. You consider the number of pathways involved, right? There is a balance of enough people who know enough to make good decisions. Right? We know if you have too many people, you would have seen it yourself. There'll be sometimes, if you've got a big team or working with a big team, you ever had fun in a planning session that just kind of goes nowhere? BAs in the room, want to comment on that? I'm sure they could.
Not having the right people in the room makes a big difference. It makes a massive difference.
What about having everyone in the room always?
That can be a problem as well.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, kind of my point, right? If you're dealing with many teams and many things, then you kind of want to have the network of the right people and things in the right places to know enough. I think there's an awareness of the whole system. You're never going to know the whole system, but you can gain enough awareness of it to be useful, right? And that comes from the mesh of people and their individual knowledge. So if you think every person that's involved in a project, they have an understanding like this, right? Of some piece of it, they'll know more. How you overlap that knowledge and those people gets you to I guess the right number of people to reach decisions. Is it everyone? Depends on the size of your team. If you've got more than 8 or 9 people in the room, you're almost certainly going to be causing more problems than you're solving. All right? But then you're getting back to the ego, the fear of missing out, all of these very, very human behaviours that can cause problems in teams. Everybody wants to be present for every decision, right? So they feel like they have input. But that can almost slow your process down. And becomes it almost becomes a question of trust within your team in terms of how you deal with just being okay with not being the person in the room. And I guess the final one for me that sticks out is to think. If you're adding tools, processes, or people into your system, impacting on your universe, right? You need to think about those dimensions, right? Very often teams make siloed decisions around their current problem set, the things they're trying to solve, without consideration for the teams around them, without consideration for the other solutions in the space around them, and without consideration for that universe that they're operating in. Right? It's very easy to do that. I don't want to say especially if you're using Scrum, but but there is that approach that you find teams tend to focus on delivering the iteration instead of thinking about the overall outcome and objective that we're trying to get to. I guess the corollary to this is, well, what doesn't help? Right? What are the things that you can look for, I guess, as flags, as warnings that maybe you're tracking the wrong way or thinking about things in a challenging way, let's say. So if you've got people on your team or people around you who believe they have full understanding, right, you should challenge that, right? I would struggle to find anyone in any, what I'll call a real world system, that actually has a true understanding of everything in that system and the interaction between the pieces, right? And by system, I mean the universe, the system around it, everything that operates in that context, not just that one piece of the product. It's really important that you think through all of these things. Pride comes before a fall. I mean, who's been this person, right? Yeah. Anyone who's in a senior or an architect position's almost certainly been there. Whether you want to admit it publicly or not is a different choice. I've certainly been that person, and that belief leads to complacency, and then you'll make mistakes. Again, very, very human behaviours, not specific to software engineering. I guess some other warning signs to consider: teams of more than 7 plus or minus 2 people. Right. Again, that just comes back to our understanding of human dynamics and team size. Right. We know these numbers. Right. There've been numerous studies done on this stuff, and you know it inherently yourself. If you've ever worked in a very small team and a very large team, you know which works best. There's a reason you break things up. And I think as an extension point of that, more than 7 plus or minus 2 teams, right? If you've got multiple teams working in one area, hey, practice online, how are we all? You've got a challenge, right, in terms of how do you maintain communication pathways just between teams, right? Think of what it does to this. If we've got, I forget, somewhere between 7 and 10 teams working in practice online as the example, do we have like 8 teams of 8 or 9 people, or do we just have 90 people in one team? I don't know, but you got to think of what the impact of that communication on your complexity. I guess calling out the obvious stuff, redundant or highly coupled dependent systems. Like look at the stuff that you're building, look at the stuff that you've built. To Russ's point earlier, reduce the number of things, right? So look at what's causing the pain. Why do we have 16 things? Whatever the number is, doesn't matter, right? But just think through, what could we change? And I mean, question everything. It's kind of, I think, it's a follow-on point. Consider the overall system, right? And this is probably the number one thing that teams, I don't want to say fail on, but fail to consider. If you're adding people, you're adding tools, you're adding processes, you're impacting the system in any way, right? Just consider the overall system. Think about how the products that are outside your black box are operating with you. Think about the teams that are operating around you. You got to think about that whole ecosystem. I mean, fundamentally, we can impact the whole system through the changes that we make in one place. We have outages, right? We have downtime. That's how these things happen. And there's no silver bullets. I really digressed here. I just about wrote another whole presentation on distraction and focus. Then I realised I was distracting myself. So that might be a different topic. But I guess what I took from that is, we know, you hear it thrown around. There's no silver bullets. Blah blah blah. The reality is they only work on vampires and werewolves, and we've got a whole host of monsters that we need to sort out. And we still haven't found the silver bullet just for the bloody vampires and werewolves, right? But we'll chase our tail on this stuff endlessly. We fool ourselves into thinking that we're making the right choice. But there's elements of confirmation bias that come into these things. And I guess the final point on what I consider to be an anti-pattern is accepting the status quo, right? I hear people use the word impossible, or you can't do it, or my favourite is, oh no, we've always done it this way. That literally makes you want to kill people. You can literally change anything. We built the whole universe that this stuff operates in. We define the rules, we define the constants, we can change anything. For better or worse, right? That's the challenge. But accepting the status quo, it's not how we level up, ultimately. So I'd say half this room is new, right? You're probably coming in, you're looking at stuff and thinking, man, that's dumb. Why do we do that? Don't hold those questions in. Verbalise them, have the discussions. Because there's good reasons for things. I guess if I bounce back to the original question, right, why do we always do the hardest thing? Well, we don't, right? Or we typically don't. Right? I think with the best of intentions, we usually believe we're applying the easiest solution, right? We usually believe we're doing the right thing. You know, people don't show up to work every day just to make life miserable for people that are going to be here 3 years down the track, right? That's not how we work, you know. But the challenge is that we're applying it to the current problem at hand in the context that we're thinking about it, right? And it's usually a smaller context. Maybe it's the whole system, maybe it's a subsystem. But we often don't think about the wider systems, the teams, the environment, right? And then in retrospect, once you do get to 2 years down the track, it looks like it was a bad decision, right? Now, is that because we just didn't think far enough outside of that context at the time? You know, it's always an element. When you're looking at stuff now and you're going, man, that's an awful decision they made back then. They just likely weren't considering some of these things, right? Or the environment has actually changed or moved so much that they couldn't have, right? It's important to distinguish between that. The environment we're in changes really fast, right? So it might seem like they did the hardest thing, but maybe back then that was the simplest possible approach for the context, the environment that they were in. And there's always that balance. You know, I think finally, you'll never find the easiest way, right? There is no such thing. But what I kind of want to implore people to do is just elevate your thinking a little bit, even just a little bit, right? To consider these elements more, right? And then hopefully, you can find the least hardest thing. Because everything we do is always going to be hard, right? You're never going to find an easy way. If it looks easy, it's probably too good to be true, and there's probably something you've forgotten. I'll kind of balance it out with a couple of quotes that I like. One's real, one's probably misattributed. So I know this one here, Richard Feynman, that one's true, because that was from his Caltech commencement address that he gave, I don't know, like 74 or something like that. And the entire speech, you should go and listen to it or watch it if you haven't. That's basically where the whole story around cargo cult came from. And the point he was making in there is that don't fool yourself. Humans fool themselves all the time, right? It's a form of confirmation bias. We fool ourselves into thinking a certain way, and then everything that happens, we attribute to our thinking, our line. It all comes together. But you know, he was a big advocate of just focusing in, really being clear on first principles and root causes, right? If you don't know who he is, he was behind, I guess, Manhattan Project and a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Read his book. He's fascinating reading. It's definitely a character. This guy you've probably seen, Einstein. Pretty sure this is another misattributed quote, but it's a great quote. The significant problems we face today cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. Right? And I think that applies so well to software development and what we do. Yeah. With the best intentions, the stuff we create today probably be crap in 3 years, because the environment will have changed. The universe we're operating in will have moved. And that's just something I just really implore the teams to just really think about, how you think about that future complication as well. And there we go. Questions, thoughts? I don't have any answers to any of these things, by the way. They're just... No? Cool. Go enjoy your lunch.